Arba'in of Hussein in the recent years, and this reflects how much of an interaction there is between Karbala and the Karbala event and he who owns the occasion and the pilgrims and the central cause in this ummah, which is that of Palestine. That's first of all. Second, today it is our ethical duty to extend to the beloved Lebanese people, to the Lebanese state, to all of the Lebanese state, and to all of the resistance factions in Lebanon as well. We extend our condolences for the passing away of former Prime Minister Salim al-Hosn. May God have mercy on his soul. He was a symbol of nationalism and nobility and purity and resistance. And we all know that Prime Minister Hosn was the leader of the Lebanese government in year 2000. He was Prime Minister in the year of liberation. He was a pillar of the resistance and supported the resistance until the end of his life. To his honorable family, I extend my warmest condolences, and also I share our pain after losing this big nationalist, patriotic resistance figure and this generous, honorable figure. And Prime Minister Hosn deserves all of this appreciation. Also, before I discuss what happened today, I salute the Lebanese people in general, the Lebanese people who stand with steadfastness, especially those in the south, the Beqa, and in southern Beirut, who are putting up with the biggest burden in this confrontation for 11 months in the supportive battlefront for Gaza, Palestine, and Al-Quds. I must mention specifically our people in the south. Since the early hours of the morning, over a period of hours, they saw fierce confrontations, bombardment, challenges, dangers, and I pray to God Almighty that He accept from them this jihad, and to them I say, and to all these supporters of the resistance, I say that these efforts and this steadfastness has its good results in this world and also will be rewarded in the next world, God willing. I must also extend, or I must salute, the mujahideen, the heroic, courageous resistance fighters who continue to stand firmly like mountains. And I thank them for their steadfastness and their courage and their dedication and their sacrifices, as they are there on the front lines and are confronting the dangers in all different areas, moment by moment. I salute all of the heroic resistance fighters in Gaza, the West Bank, Yemen, Iraq, and all those who support and stand side by side with these honorable resistance fighters who never left the battlefield for 11 months. Our topic today is that which relates to the latest developments. Of course, there is limited time because in the weekly, after the commemoration of Sayyid Fuad, we didn't speak. Now we'll speak regarding the negotiations, the region where we're headed. This needs time, but I will use the available time to discuss the confrontations which took place today. As you know, as everyone knows, the Israeli enemy weeks ago launched an aggression on southern Beirut, and this broke or crossed all the red lines. So the party which took the situation in Lebanon, this front to the situation, the party which did this was the enemy. I'm saying this for the Lebanese. They launched an aggression on southern Beirut and they bombed that well-known building, which led to the martyrdom of civilians, women and children, and also the assassination and martyrdom of the leading jihadi commander Sayyid Fuad Shukr, Sayyid Muhsin. May God have mercy on his soul and the souls of all the martyrs. it is natural that the resistance announced its commitment and its determination to respond to this blatant aggression in order to establish the equations for which a lot of blood was spilled and a lot of sacrifices were made for decades, and this is something which we could not accept in any way whatsoever. In any case, maybe many people might ask. Today I'm going to be very frank and clear, and I'll respond to many questions which are being raised. Why was the response delayed until today? Of course, by the way, today I will call our large military operation which took place today with the operation of Arba'in, the Arba'in operation, because it took place on this day which coincides with this great commemoration. Why was it delayed until today? Of course, there are various factors. This includes, although I'll draw your attention, after the funeral commemoration of Sayyid Mohsen, we were ready. Our fighters, our weapons, our plan, we were ready. But there was one detail: which target we will choose, and this is something I'll talk about, but we were ready. The delay, first of all, the level of the security alert, the state of alert general, the air, land, and sea alert, the American and Israeli, the highest state of alert. So, being in a hurry might have meant failure. Number two, the delay in of itself, as I said, in the commemoration of Sayyid Mohsen, is a punishment for the enemy. So when the assassination took place, the situation remained at the same level. This state of alert, this psychological exhaustion, this moral, economic, financial burden, it was good for it to continue, and it will continue. Because now I'm going to speak about Hezbollah's response. That we still have Iran's response, Yemen's response. Number three, the needing time to discuss the situation and hold consultations. Will the Axis as a whole respond on the same day, or will the response take place separately from the different players? This also needed some time. Number four, that when we approached the situation of taking action, they spoke about the 15th of August, and the Americans tried to pursue efforts, and one of the reasons for this, and this was hypocrisy, by the way, but one of the reasons was war. So they started to say, I stopped the aggression, a ceasefire, wait, and so we waited. Of course, we didn't tell anyone that we will give it time, but the truth is we did give it time in order to give an opportunity for these negotiations, because our aim, first and foremost, the aim behind this front and this blood and these sacrifices is to end the aggression on Gaza. So we gave the opportunity, the sufficient opportunity. Now, after all this time passed, it turned out that Netanyahu is setting new conditions. The Americans are going along with him, and so this is all a waste of time. So there is no longer any meaning for further delay. So these are the reasons which led to the delay up until now. On the other hand, as a result of the consultations, it was decided that we would react in our operation separately for certain considerations which I don't need to mention now. They will be revealed in due course with time, and that every different player in the Axis will decide when and how they would respond. And second, on the other hand, it's also clear that the negotiations are long and the horizon for the negotiations is not clear, and there are various complications. And if the Americans were indeed sincere and serious in ending the aggression, you and I, the whole world knows that America can impose on Netanyahu an end to the aggression, but they're trying to treat him in this way. They're partners with him in this war and in this crime. This is on the one hand, the negotiations, and second, we agreed to take action in light of the state of alert. Despite the weeks which passed, there was also a strong state of alert, and this could continue for weeks, it could continue for months. And we, as a resistance, have no interest in delaying this response for considerations that are linked to the resistance and also for considerations which are linked to the situation in Lebanon, the domestic situation, the situation of the people, and the atmosphere, the surrounding atmosphere, and unfortunately the psychological war which is being waged by many and in which many are participating every day. People, politicians, or media people, or military people, or other silly, worthless people, they say today's the war, tomorrow's the war, after tomorrow, 1 hour, 2 hours. It's been 11 months in Lebanon, 11 months, and this same thing is repeating itself, and these people have no shame. They have no shame. In any case, as a result of these considerations, we took the decision to respond today. This is the first part in response to the questions related to the previous phase. Now, in the rest of the speech, I will focus, or I will approach as the following. First of all, we as a resistance, our intentions, our plan, what happened today on the battlefield, and from there I will discuss or confront the strange, very strange Israeli narrative which we heard today, the Israeli version of events. From the start, we set boundaries, or we describe the nature of the response. First of all, that the target would not be civilian. We want to strike an Israeli target, but not civilians. Bearing in mind that there are civilian martyrs in southern Beirut, and we have the right to target civilians over there. Of course, civilians between brackets, and put two lines beneath that line. However, beneath that word, however, because we've been, at least until or since 1992, after the martyrdom of Sayyid Abbas, may God have mercy on his soul, and it was further enshrined in the April Agreement in 1996 to protect the Lebanese civilians in Lebanon. So in order to underscore the protection of civilians in Lebanon and sparing them any harm which could be inflicted by the enemy, we preferred not to target the civilians of the enemy. And this equation is what has protected until now. Despite 11 months since the start of Al-Aqsa Storm, generally speaking, civilians and the civilian martyrs, although we can't speak about small numbers or large, but in general we can say that to a very, very large extent there has been a protection of civilians in Lebanon. So first of all, for the target not to be civilian, and for the target also not to be infrastructure. Number two, that the target would hence be military, a military target. And this military target must have certain characteristics. One of them is that it would be linked to the assassination operation of the martyr commander Sayyid Fuad, meaning we would either strike a base that is linked to the Israeli military intelligence, or to target a base which is linked to the Israeli Air Force, because the assassination operation, in this assassination operation, these two weapons, if you would like, participated, or these two parties participated, the military intelligence and the Air Force. And that this military target would be very close to the city of Tel Aviv, meaning deep, neither Akka nor Naharaya nor Haifa nor beyond Haifa, but rather after Haifa. So to target a location close to Tel Aviv, and hence to be deep. Of course, when we searched for the targets, we found a number of important, significant military targets close to the city of Tel Aviv, and they also have the following characteristics. I'm going to speak about them. In the end, we identified a major target, a deep target for the operation, which is what I'll announce now. The Yelilot, base. There was always a debate how to pronounce this. Gililot. Gililot. On the east of the highway, because you have the highway which goes north, eastward you have a base for the Israeli military intelligence. To the west, a bit forward more, there's a base for the Mossad. This is a major base for the Israeli military intelligence, for the Amman, and you have the unit 8,200 in it, and it is the unit when it comes to, or which is assigned with surveillance, espionage, and there are huge spying devices there, or spying equipment, and many soldiers. They are the ones who manage the assassination operations that take place in the region, and they also are in charge of a lot of the psychological wars and also the sedition and deception which takes place in our region. This base is around 110 kilometers away from the Lebanese border, so it was deep. And if you look at Tel Aviv, it's only 1,500 meters away from the city of Tel Aviv, so it's one of Tel Aviv's suburbs. It is one of the bases which is very close to the city of Tel Aviv. We consider that this was a central target. We also put a sub-target, a military sub-target. We identified such a target. Why? Because this base, it might have an impact on the drones reaching the base of 8,200 Gililot. And it is a base for the air defenses and missile defenses in Ain Shima. This base is located at 75 kilometers away from the Lebanese border, 40 kilometers away from Tel Aviv. These two military bases, they were the bases which the resistance set its eyes on this morning, but the major target was that of the Israeli military intelligence in Gililot. So that was the target. In addition, there was another target, the bases and the barracks. Now, I said it, Galilot, Ililot, whatever you want, it's become clear. So, striking a number of military barracks and positions and bases, Israeli bases, whether it be in northern occupied Palestine or in the occupied Syrian Golan Heights, and these themselves are targets. There are ongoing operations striking these targets on a near daily basis and striking them, and second of all, in order to keep the Iron Dome and the intercepting missiles, to keep them preoccupied in a way which gives the opportunity for the drones to pass through and reach deep. This was the plan which was pursued. Why this clarification? I'll answer when I discuss the Israeli version. You'll see how many lies, and you'll see the allegations. It's like a Hollywood studio, the enemy's government today. When it comes to the weapons which were used, it was decided that all of the bases in northern occupied Palestine and the Golan Heights, that they would be targeted by Katyusha rockets. These rockets we've been using for 11 months, distributed on all of the front in tens, on all of, or facing all of the bases. It was decided that the brothers would launch 300 missiles. This talk about 7,000, 8,000, I'll talk about this. So the decision was made to launch 300 Katyusha missiles and to distribute them over these bases, because this number is enough, first of all, to strike these bases, about 11 or 12 bases, and second of all, to keep the Iron Dome and the intercepting missiles preoccupied for minutes so that the drones could pass through. And the other weapon was the drones. There are different sizes, different kinds, medium, large, etc. And based on the fact that some of these drones would head towards Ain Shimar or Shimra, and the larger number would head towards the area surrounding Tel Aviv, Gililot. Now, the timing and how it was pursued, the timing, we chose the morning, Sunday morning, today, the Arba'in of Imam al-Hussein, may peace be upon him. It was agreed with the brothers that they would pray the morning prayers, do what is necessary, and they would be at the launching pads at the location to open fire at 5:15. Now, what did the enemy do? I'll speak about this. Before that, before the timing at night, all of the launching pads to launch the missiles were ready on all of the fronts. They were placed, programmed at the specific time or at the set time. There was no problem. And all of the drones as well, they were ready before 5:15, whether it be towards the south of the river or the north or even in the Biqa. And for your information, this is the first time in which we launched drones from the Biqa. I'm not revealing a secret because this is seen in the radars of the enemy, of the Americans and the Israelis. So all of the drones were also ready, despite the air raids carried out by the enemy, which took place half an hour before the start of the operation. I'll talk about this later. All of the launching pads operated without any exception, so the launching pads which needed to launch 300, they all operated. Not one was hit before the start of the operation. Now, after it, I'll talk about that. Before the operation, and not 300, 320 rockets and then 340. In the statement, it said 320, but the final number was 340. And all of the launching positions launched their drones, despite the air raids. None of these locations from which the drones are launched, none of them were subject to any damage. So the missiles were launched on all of the fronts consecutively, not in 1 minute. In a few minutes, it takes a bit of time, and this allowed or led to striking all the targets with the distributed missiles, here 10, 15, over there 20, 25, according to how the brothers divided them. And the course of these drones, they all went through the border, passed through the border, whether it be from the south, north of the river, and then from Biqa, because there's a long distance. And by the way, all of the drones which were launched from Biqa, bearing in mind that they have to fly for a long distance in Lebanese territory, they also entered into the Palestinian airspace or passed through the Lebanese-Palestinian border safely, reaching the specified target. Now, when it comes to the bases in the north and the occupied Syrian Golan Heights, according to our information, they were all struck by missiles. Some missiles were intercepted by the intercepting missiles, and this was what was required. We wanted to increase the number of our missiles, to increase the number of the intercepting missiles, which would assist the drones to pass through. And nobody should say that we're revealing tactics. This is all known militarily. The enemy knows it and the others. According to our information, so the military target, the qualitative military target, which we said we'll announce later on, is the Israeli military intelligence base, the Amman base, 8,200 unit 8,200 in Galilut, at a close distance to Tel Aviv, as the original target, and the sub-target, the other close-by target, was the air defense and missile defense base in Ain Shima. According to our information and according to our sources, A large number of these drones reached these two targets, but the enemy is covering up as usual. In any case, the days and nights will reveal what actually happened over there. On the other hand, this is our version. On the other hand, we heard in the morning the version of the enemy. In some, or Netanyahu participated, and the army, the spokesman of the army also participated, etc. The focus in this narrative, now in the afternoon they changed a bit. They changed the numbers, the kind, they changed the language. And I saw in the media outlets, some of the media outlets of the enemy, advice to Netanyahu and to the enemy's army to correct some of that which they said before 6 o'clock, because person X wants to speak at 6 o'clock. What is the focus of all of these allegations? That they discovered the operation, that there would be a large-scale operation, 8,000 missiles and drones, and they would target Tel Aviv and target vital installations in Tel Aviv, and also installations, I don't know, here and there, and they carried out a preemptive action, and they struck and bombed and destroyed, and they killed and they thwarted the operation, and they are celebrating their success. That is the version. Now, okay, if this version helps them to calm down, to calm their insanity a bit, no problem. But this version is full of lies, and it's good to shed light on this, because when this Israel, which considers itself to be the strongest army in the Middle East, the strongest country in the Middle East, when it resorts to such a level of lying, this shows the level of illusions and failure and weakness of this entity. So this is the lesson we can learn from the confrontation. I consider it to be one of the achievements of the operation, the Arba'in operation. After all, as a retaliation for the assassination of Fuad Shukr and the others in Dahiya, this is an achievement. If we want to look one by one, to say that there was a plan for the resistance to target the city of Tel Aviv, they opened the bomb shelters in Tel Aviv, or targets within the city of Tel Aviv like the Ministry of Defense or the Ben Gurion Airport, etc. These are false allegations. I explained since the start the plan on the operation. Its target was to strike that particular base first and foremost. To say that there was an intent or to target, to strike civilian targets in the north or the central area, and that the enemy thwarted such attacks, these are also false allegations. The proof of this is that all of the missiles which were launched by the resistance were aimed at military targets and bases in the north. They did not hit one settlement, and if there are casualties in Naharaya or in Akka or in other settlements, this is because of the intercepting Israeli missiles. To say that the resistance was going to launch 8,000 missiles and drones, then they decreased the number a bit, 6,000 missiles and drones, and they thwarted this and they destroyed them completely. This is also a false allegation. Everything which we wanted to launch in this operation, or the whole number, was 300, but despite that we launched 340, so they did not thwart anything, and what was planned actually did happen, and even more, and a large number of drones, tens of drones. I don't want to mention the number in particular. What the enemy says, that they struck strategic, accurate or precision missiles, meaning ballistic missiles, and that they were prepared to target Tel Aviv or any other target, and that they saved Tel Aviv and they saved, I don't know, the vital installations and destroyed these missiles. These are all lies. We had no intention of using these missiles now However, we might use them in the future or soon. However, in this operation, and based on a clear vision, we didn't want to use these missiles as long as the target could be hit via drones and via a certain kind of drones, and these tactics and this large number, this was relied on. And I assure you that these missiles they talk about, these strategic precision ballistic missiles, none of them were hit. None. And here we have a failure which is similar to that operation which took place in 2006. However, that operation, the qualitative weight in 2006, its commander, Haj Imad Mughniyi, may peace be upon him, may peace be upon his soul, in his life, and the failure today. So the reason behind this failure is the commander, Sayyid Muhsin Shukr, in his life. However, it was achieved after his martyrdom. What is it exactly? Yes, many of the valleys and the open areas in some of the regions in the south, I don't know, although the Israelis know where they hit, I won't mention them, the enemy considered, or the enemy considers, that there are launching pads for these ballistic and precision missiles in these areas, and that there are installations which could be destroyed. The commander, Sayyid Fuad Shukr, a while ago took the decision and informed the brothers, and they evacuated all of these valleys and installations, and what was bombed was empty valleys, or which were evacuated, or from which these kinds of missiles were evacuated. I'm speaking now about that which relates to ballistic precision missiles, what they call strategic missiles. Of course, over the past period, every time they bomb a weapons cache, they issue a statement. The spokesman, who is known in Israel to be one of the biggest liars, he says that we hit strategic missiles and we're silent, we're happy. Well, let him believe that he hit strategic missiles. So this is a failure. This is a new failure, similar to what happened in 2006. Also, the allegation of the enemy's army, and Netanyahu personally adopted this story, and he repeated once again with his government this afternoon that he destroyed thousands of missiles and thousands of launching pads. This is a false allegation. Before noon they weren't speaking about Katyusha rockets, but then in the afternoon when they spoke about 1,000 or thousands, they started to use the term short range, so they started to correct the terminology. And also the talk about 8,000, 6,000 which were destroyed. The truth is, first of all, I mentioned that the drone bases, despite all of the air raids, were not struck. The launching pads, those which were used, all of them, they launched the missiles, and they were not hit in the previous air raids. Yes, after the launching of the missiles, 2 launching pads, fixed ones, they were bombed, and this is something normal. This happens every day in the south. Let me here refer to an important detail for the general awareness, the public opinion. How much does it cost us, a launching pad? So if we were to fix it, expend or use efforts, if we prepare it, it costs between $8,000 to $10,000. So when we put the launching pad in its position and the brothers launch the missiles from it, from our perspective, the blood and the lives of these brothers is much more valuable than the launching pad. We leave it. And a lot of launching pads, you launch the missiles there and they were left in their position and the enemy didn't bomb them. But some of these launching pads were discovered and the enemy would bomb them. This is something normal. Yes, we do have thousands of these launching pads, and let them calculate how many missiles did they strike, which cost between $6,000 to $8,000 to $10,000. This doesn't change anything. A launching pad for a Katyusha rocket. We have a huge number of these. So that's regarding the launching pads which launched the missiles. Yes, they did target some of the valleys, not in the area of operations. And this also points to something important, which I'll refer to. They struck some of the valleys, and a number of launching pads were destroyed on which there were missiles in the tens of launching pads. No problem. In all of these air raids, they're talking about 200 air raids, 100 airplanes, 200 air raids, and the result is that this number of Katyusha launching pads were destroyed. So what? Compared to what happened today, this huge image which we saw on this front. Now I want to mention the important point. Yes, half an hour before the start of our operation, they started launching air raids in the south, whether it be to the south or the north of the Litani River. The proof that they didn't have intelligence information, but they sensed something was happening. They're awake and they're in a state of alert day and night. All of the Israeli and American and European and Western and global and air, sea, land, all of these capabilities were at their disposal. In the end, 1 hour before the start, so let's say at 4, starting from 4, a large number of the Mujahideen, be in the north or south of Litani, they move about, they go to the launching pads, they have to do their job. So they sensed something was happening. For this reason, they carried out the air raids, and proof that all the locations which they targeted have nothing to do with our operation today. Neither the launching pads from which the missiles were launched, nor those locations from which the drones were launched. And this shows that they did not have intelligence information. Now they speak about an intelligence treatment. No. Yes, the airplanes, if they had launched, they struck these positions where there were the 300 missiles launched from which they were launched, then we could say there is an intelligence or there is kind of malfunction, and then we could assume that they thwarted the operation. This is what I also wanted to refer to. In general, what happened was an aggression, not preemptive action. And if we want to assume it was preemptive action, it had no impact whatsoever on our military operation today. Neither on the missiles, nor on the drones, nor on the Mujahideen, nor on the fighters. We, in the operation today, until the drones passed through and the launching of all of the missiles, despite all of the bombardment, which included a lot of valleys, there was not one martyr. After the end of the operation, the enemy bombed a number of locations which led to the martyrdom of one person from the Amal movement, from our beloved brothers, and 2 martyrs from Hezbollah. That is everything that happened in this whole thing. All of these air raids, these dangerous air raids, this is what happened. So we have an Israeli version of events which is full, or which is lies. These are all false allegations, and also an intelligence failure, because they didn't discover our launching pads, nor the drones, nor the positions from which the drones were launched, and the operation was carried out successfully and completed successfully. So there was an intelligence failure and a failure in preemptive action, and there also a failure in the action to target ballistic missiles. On the other hand, our military operation today was carried out as it was planned, precisely with its leaders, with the Mujahideen, with the command centers on the battlefield. Despite the difficult circumstances, you know, the drones filled the skies of the south ever since the martyrdom of Sayyid Fuad, waiting for what the resistance would do. And everything everything we heard from the Israelis today about big security and military achievements, we thwarted, we did this, we did that. They're lying to themselves, they're kidding themselves, and this is completely untrue. In any case, today, we saw something which reflects the courage of the resistance and those who support and stand with it. I can't mention names when they took this decision. With all of the American and Western intimidation, you saw all the delegations, foreign ministries, defense ministers, intelligence and media. If Hezbollah responds, Israel will destroy the country, Israel will do this, will do that. That era has come to an end. I'm not saying that they can't, they can, but will they go ahead? This is very complicated. It's very complicated. We launched the Katyusha and the drones, and all Israel came to a standstill from north to the south. Ben Gurion stopped operations. They opened the bomb shelters in Tel Aviv. Imagine what would happen if we used something else. Despite all the intimidation, which unfortunately some in Lebanon helped with, the resistance took this decision and went ahead and did not further delay. So the courage of the resistance, the firmness, the decision of the resistance, the strength of the resistance, the capabilities of the resistance, the human, material, military capabilities. And this is the first major operation launched by the resistance in the absence of a senior commander like Sayyid Fuad. And in the performance, in everything which was carried out, there were no shortcomings, thank God Almighty. And we believe that the souls of our commanders, the martyrs, are there with us, standing with us, striking with us, because these martyrs have, with God, enjoy with God Almighty a status which no one can imagine. If I want to talk about it, some people might not understand. In any case, this reflects the courage of this resistance, its steadfastness, its strength, its presence, and on the other hand, the fear there in the entity, in Ben Gurion Airport, in the city, in the settlements, opening of the shelters, bomb shelters in the north, the central region in Khoshdan, the millions who fled to the bomb shelters and to the fortified locations. This is something which reflects this balance which I always speak about. Never did we speak about a balance number-wise between us and the Israelis. Unfortunately, some in Lebanon, they lie, like the Israelis. Never did we say there was parity in terms of numbers. Never did we say that there was parity in terms of weapons or parity in terms of air capabilities or military or missile capabilities or technical capabilities. Israel, which America stands behind, and NATO, we all know this. However, we're speaking about parity which is brought about by blood, which defeats the sword, brought about by the will, the courage, the steadfastness, and this is what we witnessed in Lebanon for decades. And we brought an end to the weakness and humiliation in our country. Look, you all saw Israel today, but what was the situation in Lebanon? Yes, the south was suffering to a certain extent, but at the same time, the enemy was bombarding the outskirts of the villages, the valleys, the hilltops. They didn't dare strike civilians. This is a point of strength. The enemy, all of the enemy's entity, is in a state of astonishment, alert, fear. They all went to the bomb shelters of the Ministry of Defense, the Prime Minister, the War Minister, etc., etc. And in Lebanon, the enemy doesn't dare to attack civilians. Why? because there are values and ethics. Look at what's happening in Gaza, because there's international law, international community, because there's an Arab world or an Arab League, or because there is the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. No, because there is resistance, because there is a will of resistance, because there are honorable resistance fighters and supporters that embrace the resistance, whatever be the price. This is the equation which we have once again enshrined today. When it comes to what will happen in the future, this is the final point in my speech. In our statement, we said in an initial response, of course, when we said the first phase, what we meant was striking the military bases in the north. In the second phase is the launching of the drones and them infiltrating the borders and reaching the set targets or the specified targets. So our operation today was of two phases, because some considered all of them to be one phase. No, it's an operation of two phases. The first phase, 340 Katyusha missiles, which struck 11 or 12 military positions and important military positions and barracks in northern occupied Palestine and the occupied Syrian Golan Heights. And the second phase was the infiltration of tens of drones of different sizes and kinds towards the military targets, deep military targets. This operation today has ended. So we said an initial response. Is this case closed? I can tell you, frankly, we will follow up the secrecy of the enemy regarding what happened in these two operations, especially in Gilulot. We will follow up our sources, the information which we could gather, etc. If the result is satisfying, if it achieves the goal which we wanted, we consider that the retaliation to the assassination of the Mahdi commander Haj Muhsin Sayyid Muhsin has taken place. If the result, according to us, is not enough, we will reserve the right to respond later on. So let people relax. He who wants to go back to return home can return home. Let the situation in the country calm down, because there was a state of tension in the country naturally, and the psychological war and the rumors also helped ever since the crime of assassination of the Mahdi commander Sayyid Muhsin. If we decided later on, if we determined that this initial response isn't enough, it needs to be completed, the time will come later. Now, as things stand now, the country can take a breath, and in any case, the enemy announced, although we can't take them for their word, that what happened today has ended, and in our statement we also announced the end of our operation today, and we'll see what will happen in the future which will determine what will happen according to the facts and the events and the results. Of course, in conclusion, I must underscore that our front, that our operations today, in any case, might be very beneficial, might help the talks for the Palestinians or the Arabs who are negotiating with the Palestinian team, and the message is clear to the enemies and those who stand behind the enemies, the Americans, that any hopes to silence these supportive battlefronts, be it in Lebanon, Yemen or Iraq, these open fronts, these hopes are futile. Despite the sacrifices on all of these fronts, especially on our front, the Lebanese front, despite the sacrifices, the martyrs, the pains, despite the demolished or destroyed homes, the daily confrontations, what we started 11 months ago, God willing, we will continue. We will not abandon in any way whatsoever, whatever be the circumstances, the dangers, the threats, the challenges, the intimidation, and also the sacrifices. We will not abandon Gaza, nor the people of Gaza, nor the resistance in Gaza, nor Palestine, nor the people of Palestine, nor the holy sites of the Ummah in Palestine. And today, the day of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, may peace be upon him, whose speech on the 10th day of Muharram, whilst he was surrounded by thousands of fierce, brutal fighters. However, when he was offered to abandon righteousness, to surrender, his well-known remarks, which we say on our religious and also political occasions, I conclude on the Arba'een, the day of the Arba'een operation, the day of revenge and the just punishment for the blood of the commander, the Marty, Hajj Sayyid Fuad Shukr, Hajj Muhsin, Sayyid Muhsin, and the women and children, the Martyrs in South Lebanon, and all the Martyrs in Lebanon. Once again, we repeat the same thing, the same spiritual, ideological slogan or saying, you, this Israeli, this illegitimate presence, which is illegitimate, because America is also present illegitimately. It is a settlement state. They slaughtered 100 million Red Indians. But in any case, oh, you, Israel, the daughter or son of America, entity, it becomes mother. You've made me choose between flight our young, the cities, villages. They said what the Sayyid al-Shuhada said, we will not be humiliated. We are people who cannot accept humiliation, nor can we bow down to anyone. And our blood, the blood subject to injustice, will achieve victory on this sword, over this sword. We're not only fighting with blood, we're fighting with the mines, with the weapons, with the drones and with the ballistic missiles, the missiles which are hidden for a day which may come. This enemy must be very cautious and understand very well the nature, the real nature of Lebanon, where we might invade you by using a musical team, and may peace be upon you all.
All right, that was the end of speech by Hezbollah Secretary General Said Hassan Nasrallah regarding the retaliatory operations this morning that he called the Arba'een operation. Well, highlights of what he said, the Zionist army crossed all the red lines by attacking southern Beirut, in which a number of Lebanese civilians and also top commander of Shukr were martyred. And he cited the reasons why Hezbollah movement delayed in responding to that, and said that Hezbollah had different reasons, like Hezbollah was prepared to take action immediately, but they decided to choose the right targets. All of them were on high alert. The enemy was, of course, already suffering the psychological pressure, waiting and waiting to see when Hezbollah retaliates, and then said that the movement consulted other resistance groups and they decided to act independently for certain reasons that will be unveiled later on. He said, as usual, Hezbollah did not target any civilians, that they chose to target some major military bases that he mentioned that were close to Tel Aviv. They were chosen for the operation. Hezbollah kept the Iron Dome busy with a number of drones and then fired 340 Katyusha rockets at the intended targets. There were different kinds of drones that were used, of course, and also the fact that not even one single Hezbollah launching site was hit before the operation, despite Israel bragging about the so-called preemptive operation that hit all Hezbollah's launching sites, as they had in their propaganda and false news. He said drones flew